So how do you reckon COVID has benefited us?
First of all, I would like to say that I certainly agree with you that while in this case, for one down, there's one up, I'm not too sure I can say the same about every certain thing. I don't think everything's a zero-sum game. But in terms of how COVID's benefited us, I mean, I think it stripped us of our complacency a little bit, you know. I find it a bit more difficult to comment about this in Australia because we've had such a relatively easy time of COVID, depending on where you've been. Melbourne's had it a bit tough, but it's not Europe and it's not South Africa. And, I mean, America in this instance is the ostrich, but they've had it had it much more difficultly than we have. But I do think that it again, like any crisis, COVID's the ability to re-centralize our priorities. So it's taken out of complacency. It sort of made us value our family and friends who are now largely sort of removed from, I suppose. And economically, we've probably become more conscientious workers as well in the workforce because the security of our jobs has become more permanent than it was before. So I think the silver linings have to do with not pulling the wool over your eyes as much as we used to, I suppose. I mean, I think a lot of the benefits for COVID will be seen later on down the road rather than right now because people are still in the thick of it. Running back to climate change, it's actually like they did after the financial crisis. Biden will do what Obama did, which is input a whole bunch of funding for renewable energies and R&D and climate change. And so when the economy crashes like it has now with COVID and as it did 10 years ago with the GFC or 12 years ago, it gives an opportunity to reconstitute an economy and a society in more favourable or more egalitarian terms. So I think that's a really big benefit. It depends whether the governments of the world and the constituencies that they represent are far-sighted enough to actually achieve it, though. Respect.
When I think about all of the things I've experienced in my world or my life, and I think the history books quite clearly document this as well. Often before a disaster, there's a whole series of warning signals that flash up, and often the people who do die in disasters are the people who've missed all the warning signals. Part of me wonders whether in maybe the end of my lifetime, end of our lifetime, whether we'll end up looking back and go, holy shit, COVID was a warning signal and we frigging missed it.
I think it's if you're talking about the prevalence of the ability for pandemics to occur, then if you're suggesting that there might be another pandemic that will do a far more efficient job than COVID's done in killing us, then yeah, I think that's something to be certainly wary of. I think with an overpopulated world with, I mean, this one was through wet markets and bad hygiene practices. It's just compounding problems, and with globalization, America's not far from China anymore. You know, Europe's not far from China anymore. So I certainly agree that this should act as a warning sign, both for pandemics and for general crisis and more generally. Will we rise to the task? Well, I'm not sure. I mean, I think putting in the the safeguards to make sure a pandemic is better responded to is achievable until it goes outside of living memory. I think if we're using this as a wake-up call for our complacency for the risks that are out there more generally, then I think we're going to have greater trouble, particularly when it comes to things like climate change, which are, as we say, long-term problems that people can find complacency with a lot more easily. It's not quite, because it's long-term, and the effects of more extreme weather events are harder to be tied to a definite anchor point.